Hi there. Welcome to the Unwritten Book Summit. In this virtual event, I'm interviewing experts from the book publishing industry as well as some self-published authors to talk about their experiences writing, publishing, and promoting nonfiction, especially business books. The interviews are pre-recorded and will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. So whether you're currently writing a business book or it's part of your 3-year or 5-year plan, you can always access these videos. And I'm doing the summit as a promotion for my own book launch. Unwritten, The Thought Leader's Guide to Not Overthinking Your Business Book officially launches on October 1st. You can pre-order it now through Amazon, Barnes& Noble, Bookshop, or directly from the publisher, which is Amplify Publishing. Now let's get to today's guest. So Zach, this is Zach. Zach has been in the publishing industry since 2011 and has worked with dozens of authors to publish and launch their books. He's a certified coach through Columbia University and holds a master's in organizational psychology. He uses this to help business and self-help authors create a book that's both data and human-driven. Zach has overseen the development and launch of 5 Wall Street Journal best-selling books and multiple Amazon best-selling books. Zach, it's great to chat with you.
Yeah,
I think what you do is so valuable. I'm always a fan. I'm always sending my ghostwriting clients in your direction because I think everyone can use a conversation around how to publish, what's the path to publishing. So I think so many first-time authors just don't know what to expect when they're
yeah,
getting into this process. And it's hard to get the answers you need all on your own. So I imagine working with you is certainly a great relief to them. So love to get into some questions for you. I'll try to keep my questions brief. I'm sure I could ask you a million things and we could talk for hours. But we're going to keep this
absolutely. We'll try to keep it short for your
keep
audience,
it
right?
short for the audience. Exactly. Yes, yes, yes. So I guess my first question is, how do you help clients find the right path to publishing?
Yeah, it's what I like to do is I want to understand who they are as an author. Just like why do they want to be an author? Why do they want to write this particular book? And I know in your book you hit on this a bit, and I loved how you called it the book why of the why of their book.
Yeah.
And I tend to focus on the author why, but I think now I'm going to talk about it separate, the book and author
Oh,
why.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. They
because
could
those
be
can be two
separate.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But
Hmm.
like I really want them to really get to know them, what's driving them, what's passionate. And I'm sure as you know, like authors are some of the most exciting people to work with because they're
Hmm.
so passionate about what they do.
Yes, yes.
So I want to get to know them, get to know their dreams with their book and how they see success.
Hmm.
Really, like are they looking to build a business? Are they looking to have an impact, pass on their knowledge?
Right.
And really, what does that look like for them?
Hmm.
And once I understand that, then we talk about, okay, here's the realities of publishing. Here's what the publishing landscape looks like today. And then we go in a little bit deeper into what each of the paths look like and potentially what could be a fit for them.
I see. Cool. Yeah. I think of the books that I write with people in a similar way as because whether if you're going to write a book to grow your business, that's one type of book. But if you want to
Yeah.
write a book to sort of leave a legacy or, as more thought leadership and, now I'm ready to start a movement or, really, really, go off in a new direction or something like that. Then, those are two different books. And we talk about that. I talk about that a lot with my authors as well. So that's great.
Yeah.
So talk about the paths to publishing. What are the options? I talk about this a bit in my book as you know as well.
Yeah, yeah. So there's three main paths, and even within these three main paths, there's kind of sub paths you can look at.
Yeah.
But traditional, self-publishing, and hybrid publishing. So traditional is sell your manuscript to a publisher who pays you in advance, maybe in
Yeah.
today's day and
If you're
age,
lucky. Yeah.
if you're lucky. And
Yeah.
then you're basically selling the rights to your book to them to publish it. Self-publishing, which is pretty much the opposite. You're the one who's calling all the shots. You're putting together everything for your book and putting it out there for people to purchase and enjoy. And then you got hybrid publishing, which you have experienced recently and are going through with Amplify as
Mhm.
an example. But that's where it's kind of the bridge between the two, where you still, the author, one of the major things is you still own the copyright to your book and own all
Mhm.
the content.
Yes.
And then from there, you are paying more of the upfront cost, but getting the expertise more of like a traditional publishing service.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, that gives everybody the lay of the land. I really like that. And then there's independent publishing. Where do you see that as falling in the rubric or the
Yeah, yeah.
scale?
So I would say that's kind of you could go through that falls under like some traditional but more lower tier, not lower tier, but just specialized publishers who
Yeah,
might only do certain types of books or work with certain type of authors.
that's right.
There's also service-based publishers or distributors. Those are ones that you have to just be mindful of and be careful of to make sure that you understand the expectations of what they're providing for you.
Yeah,
And then yeah, like the independent, there's like the indie authors, places where you can go out and publish your books through those
yeah.
channels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Always, user beware. That's one of the big
Yeah,
things I
yeah,
tell everybody because you really have to ask a lot of questions and figure out what you're getting for your money when you're paying for these services,
yeah.
and it's what's the difference between a hybrid publisher and a vanity publisher? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Those
can be
fine
blurry,
lines, there's
right?
those
Yeah,
very
yeah.
fine lines.
Yes,
Well,
exactly right.
and
Yeah.
and I one watch out for your audience too, is I talked to an author about a year ago who had made the choice to publish a book. They went through a publisher, or excuse me, a service-based publisher, but
Mhm.
they just turned out to be like more of a distributor.
Right.
And every time they go in to change their book, they could charge them several $100s. And I just was like, my
Oh,
heart went out to this
yeah.
author because they just didn't know what they didn't know. And so
Hmm.
like not having that knowledge, they are now kind of stuck and
Right.
and being able to like be like, well, what do I do? And so we work
Yeah.
through it and they're taking steps to try and get their book back, but it's a industry fraught with not so
Yeah.
great information, but there
Yeah.
are there's good people out there too.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, great. So that leads into like where do you recommend authors start in this process?
Yeah. So if you're looking at the different paths, there's a few areas I recommend for authors to look at. Look at your budget. What does your budget look like? Your timeline. Do you want the book out within the next 6 months, or are you okay to wait 1 to 2 years? How much creative control do you want to have? All the decision-making power. You lose some of that with especially traditional publishing.
Mhm.
What network and means and ability do you have to go out and support to sell your book? And then what are your financial expectations for the book sales, but also what the book can do for you outside of that, especially for business authors? Like,
Yeah.
is it going to increase your rates? Are you going to do a course around it? Are you going to expand on your content? Like, what are those other financial returns that you're going to look at?
Hmm. Hmm. That's great. Yeah. So once you figure out that you want to write a business book, say, and maybe you're thinking self-publishing, um, one thing I did, I'll say, is that I talked to other authors that I knew, people who were
Yeah.
in the publishing process or working on their books, and I think that this can kind of help you avoid publishers who maybe aren't on the up and up, maybe can create some of those problems like you talked about with your client. Ask around, who did you work with, right?
Yeah.
That gives you a lot of proof of concept and proof of is somebody I want to consider working with, and also you get a sense of what it costs too, if people are willing to share, and in my experience they are very open to
Hmm.
sharing what it costs, and talking about the process. So I found that really valuable. And I've had a bunch of people reach out to me recently to ask about my experience with Amplify. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a really also a good place to, do your research, start your start your
Yeah.
research.
Start early and understand and like you said, be curious around
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
And one thing I would add to that too is have the expectation that no publisher is perfect.
Yeah.
I recently did a podcast that I'll be releasing soon called Why You'll Be Disappointed in Your Publisher,
Oh,
even if
I
it's
need to listen to
yourself.
that one. Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
that because it's all about expectations. There's going to
Yeah.
be mistakes.
Yeah.
I think my background when I was at Franklin Covey,
Yeah.
we had maybe out of all our books, there was always a delay. The book
Hmm.
never launched when we intended it to. Now, sometimes
Yes.
that was just a month delay, sometimes it was a year delay, but like there's always going to be bumps in the roads, and that's having
Yeah.
a growth mindset of being an
Right.
author and expecting that you're going to learn and you're
Yes.
going to hit bumps and then you're going to be like, okay, we got to reset and
Hmm.
work with your team again. Be like, all right, we've
Yeah.
hit this bump. What can we do to address this?
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think also making sure to understand the expectations up front, because I think a lot of authors I meet, when, especially if they're thinking about going the traditional route, they think, oh, good, I won't have to do the marketing. I won't have to worry about all that
Yeah.
part. They're going to figure out how to sell the books. Not at all true, right?
No,
Regardless of which
no.
path you take, right? There's a lot that you have to do as the author to also put your work out there.
Yeah, yeah. If you have a traditional publisher, you have to act like you don't have a traditional publisher. Everything's still on you as the author to get it done and
That's
market
right.
the book.
That's right, right. They want to know how you're going to sell your books,
Yeah,
not the
yeah,
other way around,
yeah.
right? What's your audience? How big is your audience? What's your network like? Yeah, exactly,
hmm
exactly. Yeah, really important to know. Okay, so we started talking a little bit about timeline. What can you tell us in terms of what authors can expect with a timeline, knowing that these are never hard and fast rules. I actually put my timeline into my book as well because I thought that might be a helpful thing for people to see. But knowing that probably no book timeline is the same.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's not. It's not. And so if you had like pretend you had a final manuscript today. If you go to the traditional publisher, you turn it in today, you're probably looking at, with most of them, the earliest, and I say the earliest would be late spring, early summer, most
Mhm.
likely probably the fall of next year. So you're looking at least a year with the finished manuscript. Now, that doesn't mean you can't pitch and sell your manuscript before that time. That would just mean you're working to get the manuscript ready, and it's probably 1 to 2 years with a traditional publishing route.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, right. It's important to point out that doesn't include the pitching process, which can take a
Yeah.
long time, right? Right, as
And the
well.
pitching
Yep.
process can take 3 to 6 months to hear back. And some publishers you'll never hear back from.
Right.
They just don't have time to get back to everyone.
Sure. Hmm.
Going down hybrid, jumping to what
Yeah.
you've experienced, they tend to be a little bit shorter than traditional publishers, but you're probably looking at least between 6 and 8 months from when the time your manuscript is finished that it will be out
Hmm. Hmm.
and into the world. And then self-publishing, there's lots of little nuances you could do there, but I'd say on average for authors, 3 to 6 months. 3 months is pushing pretty quickly, depending on how you're going about having the book designed. It does take time to get it up and distributed. And for quality control, you want to make sure you get sample copies, proof copies of your book to make sure everything looks good.
Hmm.
So I would plan at least 6 months. Just put
Yeah.
that in your plan for that. If you go, the quicker way is if you do an ebook. If you just
Hmm.
do an ebook, or maybe if you're just going to do an audiobook, I've
Hmm.
seen authors launch with
Mm.
those formats before,
Yeah.
and that could take you as little as 2 months. It just
Right.
depends on what you're looking to do and accomplish in your goals around
Right.
everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think one reason I decided to use a hybrid publisher is because then I wouldn't have to worry about the timeline. That was kind of on them. Like they're figuring out however long it's going to take to get the designer to do the cover. They're figuring out how long it takes to do the formatting and the proofs, and all
Yeah,
of that is kind of they kind of hand you the timeline with that. And so that's, I think, a little bit helpful. But if you're going to have to find all these services on your own as a self-publisher, then you have to factor that into the amount of time it's going to take you. Because you might think, and like you said with an ebook, I mean, honestly, if your book is finished, it could be uploaded in an
yeah,
hour, yeah, right,
it could,
to
it could.
Amazon. Yeah. But that doesn't take into account, you need a cover, you need to make sure the formatting is right, and
Yeah.
all the little things that you have to
When
figure
you
out.
want to optimize your listing, like you called
Yeah.
this out in your book, there's estimated between like 2 to 3, and I've seen even 4 million books published every year. So you're
Yes.
entering a huge red ocean. And so you need to do the little things that are going to
Hmm.
help your book stand out from a search and
Right.
optimization standpoint. And then on top
Yes.
of that's all the marketing that you're going to
That's
do.
right. That's right. Just because it's up on Amazon doesn't mean you're going to sell thousands of copies, right?
Yeah,
It's the
you might
same
tens
problem
of
as,
copies.
yeah, it's the same problem as being on social media. Just because you post something to LinkedIn doesn't mean your 10,000 followers are going to see it, right? It's
Yeah,
hundreds of people see it, and so the algorithms play a role in your book being seen, and found through search as well. So yeah, that's a really important thing to find.
yeah,
Yeah, you really lean on your network when you start putting your book out there. As much as you can, you have to get your book launch team together and get people to share your book with their audience. And I've been really surprised at how generous people are, and they read it, they say it's great,
Yeah.
how can I help, and that's really awesome. But yeah, it's a lot of word of mouth. It's more than you imagine, and I think that that's probably true for all but like the very top authors who have all the name recognition that you can imagine, like Patterson or somebody
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, right?
Well, and
Selling
they all
millions of copies.
started where we're starting out. Like I'm
Totally.
working on my first book. You're about to publish your
Yeah.
first book, and it takes time, it takes consistency,
Right.
and authors are they're tough. Like you have to
Yes.
go at it and be consistent, and it can take years. And many authors
Exactly.
get into their third or fourth book before they even start seeing potential return or things being quote unquote easier than it was the
Yes.
first time.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like if you want to be a novelist or you want to write children's books or things like that, like yeah, you have to kind of think about the long term and what that could look like. Yeah. Well, we've
Yeah.
talked about a lot of the challenges around being an author and getting the word out and publishing. So let's talk about like the main advantage to working with someone like you, an author strategist.
Yeah. So I think the one thing that author strategists and coaches can offer is our experience. And so we can help you set expectations because a lot of authors get a little lost in like, well, how do I write it? How long should it take?
Yes.
And how do I market it? How do I build my brand? And how long is it going to take? And we can go in and say, hey, here's what the kind of basic timeline is. And then we go in a little bit deeper into like some of the stuff I covered at the beginning, your why and all that.
Hmm.
And then we can help you set a timeline, like
Hmm.
how to time things when you're writing, publishing, and marketing. So,
Hmm.
like as an example, many authors go through this journey and they ask, well, when should I start marketing? And generally, we're starting to get a feeling that it's about 6 months before your book is published that you need to start. And this is
Hmm.
in the midst of
Hmm.
you like finalizing your book and
Yeah.
like getting it ready to go to print. So it's a
Yeah.
very busy time. Now, it
Yes.
doesn't mean you're fully engaging in like 100% of your day's marketing. It might be like 5 to 10%, but it's like you're starting to be thinking about it from that point on. So
Right.
as other strategists, we can help you think, all right, here's what you need to do by when. Because
Yeah.
what happens to too many authors is they think, all right, my book's out there, it's about to launch, and let's start marketing. And it's
Yeah.
90 days or 30 days before
Yeah.
the book launches, and you're like, holy
Yeah.
crap, what do I do?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think another example I'll point out too is like if you go self-publishing and you go through like Ingram Spark, for example,
Hmm.
which is where I work with a lot of the authors,
Hmm.
is you need to make sure your book's up and distributed through the retailers long enough, like Amazon, that Amazon is going to order books to put in
Hmm.
their warehouse.
Right.
Because if you launch your book and then within a week it shows up and then you start marketing it, it could go out of stock
Mm.
and
Yeah.
pretty immediately because Ingram Sparks
Hmm.
print on demand, but they'll print based on what Amazon orders for their warehouse. And that's
Uh,
just devastating for an author who has all
yeah.
this stuff planned. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, I can't order your book. It's out of stock.
Oh
And you're like,
no. Yeah.
what happened? So I
Right.
call those watch outs. We can help fill
Yeah.
in those watch outs and
Uh-huh.
those little nuances.
Oh yeah, that's so valuable. Like that accountability, that gut check, like is this the way this is supposed to work? Like what should
Yeah.
I be doing now? Like all these questions that I've been asking my marketing people. Like what should I be doing? What's happening? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's great to have somebody to calm you down and say, yeah, this is you're on the right track or this is what you need to do now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I feel like I haven't labeled this, I don't know what to call this phenomenon, but I think because we all went to school and you read books growing up and you learn about English. So it's like, oh yeah, yeah, publishing a book, yeah, that's not hard. But then you get into it and you're like, wait, I don't understand anything. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah. That's right. That's
Like
right.
sometimes authors come to the point where they're like, yeah, I know how to do this, and it's because I grew up with all this stuff and reading books. And it's like,
Right.
no, it's okay if you don't know. Like
Yeah.
it's a full industry. There's little steps along the way and all
Yeah.
these little details, and
That's right.
that's what we're here for to help guide you through that process.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean details that you couldn't even imagine that
Yeah.
would matter or that might make a difference. And yeah, so having somebody to look out for those things and warn you about them is huge. Yeah.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Zach. This has been a really great conversation.
Yeah,
I
you're
feel
welcome.
like I've learned a lot about the publishing process just in this short conversation, and I really can't wait to share this with my audience. As I mentioned, I have a section on publishing in my book. I share my book's timeline, as I said too, to help give authors an example of how the self-publishing or hybrid publishing process works. Again, from my experience, and your mileage may vary, of course. But I'd love for you to grab the book and check that out. If you're looking for somebody to help you strategize about the best path to publishing, reach out to Zach. His website is juxtabook.com. You can see in the back of his on the wall behind him, Juxtabook.
Right there.
It gets a little tough to spell if you're just hearing it. You can
Yes,
check that out there. And so you can find out about, he's got a bunch of on-demand courses there. He's got info about working with him one-on-one. You started a podcast, right?
I did. I
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's called Your Path to Publish. So I go
Great.
over all sorts of things, but really thinking about what you need to figure out which of the three options are best for you.
Yeah, that's awesome too. And I can't wait to check that out. So,
Yeah.
all right. Thanks so much, Zach. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily. Thanks for having me on.